I'm happy to be here, happy to see everybody. I understand that Joe Biden is talking at exactly the same time. And I see I have a brother in Colorado Springs, it's Barry Wick there. And he said it was a tough choice. So, oh, there he is. I thought maybe he wasn't showing his video because he was watching Biden on the television and listening to me at the same time. So
Actually,
good
Gary,
good to see you.
it's
Okay.
9 p.m. Eastern time.
Oh, okay. All right. We thought that we would have some kind of a decision today, but obviously we don't. And although on Tuesday evening, when I saw the results coming in, I was quite distraught, as some other my associates and family were, but because, we're on one side of the fence. But it has been a real wild ride, this election, and also the last 4 years have been a wild ride as well. So how many of you have been addicted to checking your phones and computers or TVs every few hours for all the breaking news, right? So as we get older, we get more addicted to political news and to sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's obvious that we're a deeply divided nation. The amount of support that Trump garnered is baffling to those of us who value decency, honesty, and compassion. When people vote, they vote in their own self-interest, whether it be economic, racial, or one issue such as abortion, or xenophobic. Trump received, and tonight I looked at it, 70 million votes. And these people are our neighbors and our friends, and in some cases, our family. But right now, we're in the midst of a number of crises. Such as a COVID pandemic and the economic slump. But these crises will run their course, and they'll be corrected. In my mind, the most serious crisis is the climate and ecological crisis. Species are disappearing daily. Wildfires and hurricanes of unprecedented proportion are becoming very commonplace. And the temperature is rising both in the atmosphere and the oceans are becoming more acidic. And this crisis demands energy and resources that unfortunately have not been forthcoming in the current administration. And we don't know at this point who the president is going to be. Although from all of the polls last week, those of us who were either Biden supporters or opposed to Trump were optimistic by the polls. And now all of the pundits are saying that Biden's going to win. But, as we say, it's not over till it's over. So we just don't know. So what brings us in these troubling times peace and serenity? First, we have to recognize and accept that there is no security or certainty in this life. Pema Chodron wrote, "If you're invested in security and certainty, you're on the wrong planet." For me, Zen practice is to learn how to live with uncertainty, which in the words of our first Zen peacemaker tenet is how to maintain the mind of not knowing. That's how to maintain uncertainty, how to step into the unknown, to maintain the mind of not knowing. And there's a Zen expression that says there's not even a square inch of ground upon which to stand. Or I'm fond of quoting the Diamond Sanka the Diamond Sutra that states, in our fleeting life, it's like a tiny drop of dew or a bubble floating on a stream, like a flash of lightning in a summer cloud, or a flickering lamp, an illusion, a phantom, or a dream. Because of our attachment to certainty in the midst of uncertainty, we have the Gatha of Atonement. The Gatha of Atonement is a touchstone that brings us back to our purpose as Zen Buddhists. Before any significant Buddhist ceremony, we recite the Gatha of Atonement in order to purify ourselves and make ourselves unconditioned. We can also use the Gatha at any transition point in our life, such as right now. So the one we chant here at Great Mountain Zen Center is a little different from the Zen Peacemaker rendition, but I'll mention the Zen Peacemaker rendition. It goes like this. All my ancient twisted karma, from beginningless greed, hate, and delusion, born of body, speech, and mind, I now fully atone. In the ultimate Buddhist sense, twisted karma is created when we're not one with the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. It's when we fragment ourselves. Twisted karma is a false sense of separation, which includes any duality at all. So all my ancient twisted karma, it's beginningless. And so is our greed, hate, and delusion, born of our body, speech, and mind. So to atone means to unify, to be at one. That's what atone is, at one. Bernie always said that Zen is to realize the oneness and the interconnectedness of life. That is the intent of reciting the Gatha of Atonement, to become so unconditioned that we forget any attachments we have to our small self, and to experience and to realize the oneness and interconnectedness of life. In the three pure precepts, which are part of the 16 Bodhisattva precepts we recite during Jukai, the first precept is to cease doing evil. Whenever we create separation or fragment the self, we're doing evil. And from this precept is where the first tenet arose. Bernie told me that the three tenets originally came from the three pure precepts. Cease doing evil corresponds to maintaining the mind of not knowing, not attaching anywhere, not getting stuck in any position. And then about 10 years later, I brought it up to him and he said, no, I didn't do that. So, but I'm going to stick by my story. Okay. So knowing creates separation. Not knowing is most intimate. The fragment itself is the shadow side of our own being. And it's so lost in the illusion of separation that all it can do is rebel against unity. The fragment itself is terrified of the unknown, and with good reason. The fragment itself does not want to be made whole because it would then disappear. But the road to realizing this unfragmented self or true self is not for the weak of heart and the casual meditator. Those who are just curious will be quickly disappointed. There has to be a deep longing in your heart and a fire burning in your gut. You must be willing to plunge into the abyss of the unknown. And you must be willing to surrender control to something larger than your fragmented ego. In fact, it's a state in which you have absolutely no control. In Koan case 73 of the Book of Equanimity, in the verse, for the case is called Sozan's Requited Filial Piety, the verse says, hang on to indignity or hold to a grudge, and you'll be cursed by a devil's spell. So right there, it's creating evil, hanging on to separation of any kind. When we let go of these false views, the enlightened life opens up and we realize that we're not separate from everyone else. It's our constant preoccupation to foster and protect our false view of self. It's an unthinking habit that most of us would be unlikely to question or explain. The Buddha taught that all of our suffering is associated with this preoccupation. All loss, all gain, pleasure, and pain arise because we identify so closely with this vague feeling of a self-image that we cling to. And we are so emotionally attached and involved with this self that we take it for granted. Now, karma works in very strange and mysterious ways. There's been volumes written about it by theologians and religious people of all stripes about, the good fortune of evil people or the bad fortune of righteous people. So we don't know. But we just do the best we can, constantly atoning. I heard the story about a nerdy looking guy who was sitting in a bar staring at his glass, and a bully walks in. And he grabs the glass and drinks it down in one gulp, and then he glares at the fellow and he says, "What are you going to do about that, wimp?" And the nerd blubbered and cried, and the bully said, "What's wrong with you?" And he shakily said, "This morning, I got fired from my job. I went home and I found my wife in bed with my best friend. As I was leaving the house, the dog bit me in the leg. And I was driving away, I wasn't paying attention. I ran into another car and totaled it right in front of this bar. So I came in here and decided to kill myself. I put poison in this drink and was contemplating drinking it. But enough about me. How's your day?" So how is your day? What karma are we creating? The three poisons are greed, hatred, and delusion. And they arise when we feel inadequate in some way. We need something to feel complete or successful or to gain the admiration of our peers. We don't recognize our unfragmented self, our authentic self. We need something to feel good about ourselves. And I always ask my students, right now, what are you lacking? Right now, what are you lacking? Yeah. Oh, I want the results of this election to be decided. You know, I mean, one of my students at the Roshi Shinko was one of her students she was talking to today was so upset about the election that their face, broke out in rashes. We each need to look inside ourselves and see what we're holding on to and why we're holding on to it and why it's so important. But we look at our culture, the growing gap between the 1% uber wealthy and the middle and lower classes in this country and elsewhere. It's a manifestation of greed. How many cars does one need? Our consumer society and our adulation of wealth and power create institutionalized greed. What is the value of spiritual wealth in this materialistic world? Master Uman said that each one of us has a wish-fulfilling jewel within. Our practice is to reveal that jewel. From my perspective, the healing that must take place in our country depends upon the realization of no self. When we realize no self, we experience the unity of life, and we also realize the interconnectedness of life. When we feel connected to everyone else, we would not think of causing them harm. And a natural consequence of the experience of no self is an awareness that everyone is connected, and that what we do affects everyone else. Unconditional compassion arises from one's true self, which is devoid of ego, personality, or essence. If it's devoid of self and essence, then it is not limited. The true self is boundless and contains everything. If it contains everything, then nothing can defile it. We can create healthy or unhealthy karma with our body, our mouth, and our thought. If we look at the 10 grave precepts, we see that they can be divided into these categories. At a simple level, killing is a physical act done with the body, and lying is done through speech, with the mouth. But you can kill somebody's spirit by constantly criticizing them and telling them that they're no good. Some of you may have been deeply injured by parents or teachers who verbally abused you. Yeah, and we can tell lies with our whole body. Yeah, and as far as the mind goes, we're constantly elevating ourselves and putting others down in our own mind. Years ago, I remember being very impressed by Jimmy Carter when he confessed to having unchaste thoughts. Our Zen motto is, it's not what you think. Yet thoughts can create karma precisely because it's not what you think. But I want to be clear that atonement is not guilt, but acknowledging that we are not separate from all that is. The best way to atone is to heal the fragmented self, to reveal yourself as one. Then the 3 poisons transform into the 3 wisdoms. Yeah. And we atone for our twisted karma. Now that the election is over, but not decided. I recall the words of Nelson Mandela. He said, "Our human compassion binds us, the one to the other, not in pity or patronizingly, but as human beings who have learned how to turn our common suffering into hope for the future." As a country, we have a lot of work to do to reestablish our democratic institutions and to heal the rancor that divides us. I have hope for the future and will do what I can to help to realize a more just and compassionate society. In Hamlet, Shakespeare said, there's nothing good or bad. It is thinking that makes it so. Sounds very Zen. So, Zen, you are not what you think. But I'll close with the words of the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, well, you might find you get what you need.